Short questions, short answers by Torah teacher Ariel and eBible. They provide the questions and I provide the answers. And that's the way it works. So here's our question. What was the Old Testament way of salvation? Let's talk about this very important topic for tonight. I agree with all of the eBible answers given that you might read if you were on their webpage. We Christians affirm that Yeshua, Jesus, has always been the only way to salvation. However, unknown to many Christians, many religious Jews, particularly those in Paul's day, believed not in works-based salvation. They believed in an ethnic-based salvation. Allow me to explain using a popular phrase found in Paul's letter. Okay, so let's talk about this now. What is this ethnic-based salvation? Works of the law, Greek is ergonomou, is actually one of the most challenging statements of Paul when read outside of the context of Paul's first century Jewish worldview. On the one hand, mere mechanical law-keeping will never save anyone, nor will sincere law-keeping for that matter. Understand, the Torah, the law, was not given of God to provide salvation of the soul. However, it is a wonderful sanctification tool when used by the Holy Spirit, and it is a tool used to highlight and convict both regenerate and unregenerate men of sin. So, on the theological level, it's true that keeping the law does not save us. In fact, keeping the law has never saved anyone. However, the standard Christian theological discussions on law versus grace often fail to grasp Paul's 2,000-year-old historical and sociological discussions about group membership and what this meant to many first-century Jews. Let's talk about it. In Paul's day, Israel sincerely, albeit incorrectly, believed that group affiliation is what mattered most in terms of corporate salvation, both in this life and in the life to come after one died, you understand? In their understanding, belonging to, that is, getting into and staying in the family clan of Israel was the most important detail an individual person could focus on. So, Jews both then and now refer to the social policies that govern Jewish life as halakha, that's their term. And it's a Hebrew word which refers to the way in which an individual or corporately or to individually or corporately walk out Torah in a practical manner. That's halakha. So let's talk about their halakha. The Torah has built-in God-given halakha, and this is actually true. But most often it was the additional responsibility of Jewish leaders to determine specific group policy, etc., where the Torah was silent in some matters. So they tried to make up the answers when they didn't have a clear answer. And in their segregated way of thinking, all of covenant Israel was comprised of Jewish people only, viz., everyone in Israel was a Jew. If a non-Jew wanted to attain corporate salvation, both now and after they died, that person needed to legally convert to become a Jew first, and thus join, quote, Jewish Israel, end quote. And then once they were legally recognized as Jewish, their place in the physical covenant was ostensibly maintained by keeping the Torah. That's their halakha. You guys following me? This, quote, group membership imposed Torah observance, end quote, concept is actually termed covenantal nomism. Thus, Paul's term works of law that we read about is actually a sociological and technical phrase that's used to describe the historic Jewish-only policy that forbade Gentiles from joining Israel without going through a man-made conversion policy to become a Jew. So the Gentiles had to change their ethnic status in order to be counted as covenant members. In short, this policy suggests that the Torah was and is for Jews only, and that works of the law was an ancient way of referring to Jewish identity leading to covenant faithfulness. That's what the term works of the law was referring to in Paul's letter. For Jews in the first century, God was offering a simple package deal equation. We had Jewish Israel plus Torah keeping equals corporate salvation, both in this life and in the life to come. Notice their equation. Obviously, by now, most Christians understand that this historic, theological, Jewish-only policy is at odds with the genuine gospel of God through His chosen Messiah Yeshua, the true way of salvation, a gospel taught from Genesis to Revelation. So we can see that right away. Using this more historically accurate way of interpreting Paul's writings in the New Testament, however, we understand Paul to be opposing this first century inaccurate theological policy by saying to both Jews and Gentiles, listen up, no one gets into Israel, that is saved merely by being or becoming Jewish, and then stays in Israel by keeping the Torah. That's really the message that Paul's trying to cut across. Now, how do we know this to be the proper interpretation of Paul's writings? If we study the New Testament as an historical document alongside the other extant writings that have survived from the first century Judaisms, i.e. the rabbinic commentaries, the Talmud, etc., as well as corroborate the theology of the Old Testament scriptures in proper context, right? If we do that together, then we begin to get a more accurate picture of the pattern of theology of the first century Jewish people, and what we discover is that the Jewish concept of individual/group salvation cannot be easily caricatured by the simplistic, quote, merit theology, end quote, the way historic Christianity has traditionally characterized Jewish devotion to Torah. Check out my podcasts, which are available on iTunes. You can search for me in the store under the search term Ariel Hanavi. But if you prefer to watch your theology, check out my YouTube channel, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and click the bell for notifications. New content is added weekly or even daily.